Hi, everybody. So you're going to be joining, let's see, join computer audio. Okay.
And I will try to answer them. And we will have more opportunities to get together. But I feel like my time has run out.
Can you answer a question?
Oh, I could take a question. I could take a question. Does somebody want to type a new question in, or should I? Let's see. Wait, I said that Chava doesn't have lack of control. I don't know if I understand that question. Yeah, maybe you guys can ask a new question. I feel like I've already moved past that, or I'm just not as good a reader.
And they can get to you after.
Or I can get to, or you can get to me afterwards. So, yeah, I don't know if there's any questions. I don't see any hands raised, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Revitz and Rachel Books. Thanks so much for your beautiful talk. And all of us are inspired. And everything you said, I hope will be internalized by all of our listeners out there today. We are excited to continue our program. It is amazing. I truly cannot believe how lucky everybody is to get so many quality speakers and so many intelligent and helpful, wise folk in one day. It's pretty unique, pretty amazing. Our next speaker is somebody who we have had the pleasure of knowing for many years. In fact, I've known Rabbi Shmuley longer than I've known my Rebbitzin, Rachel. And the story goes like this, very quickly. I was a student at Oxford University, and I had the pleasure of being at Rabbi Shmuley's house and Shabbos table and part of his L'chaim society there. And he convinced me, he said, Yonah, you have to stay in Oxford for another year and help me with the L'chaim society. And he even gave me a blessing inscribed in a book that I would find this in the next year, the right one. And sure enough, Shmuley's blessing came true, and I had the opportunity that year to meet Rachel Bookstein. So we owe a lot to Shmuley, an awful lot. And we're so grateful that over the years we've had the opportunity to work with him on wonderful projects and to benefit from his insights, his wisdom, and his full, total efforts, always on behalf of the Jewish people. I don't know many other people in the world who have as much enthusiasm and strength to fight for the Jewish people as Rabbi Shmuley. And in addition to that love of the Jewish people, he's also written some of the most important books for a wider audience on Jewish approaches to intimacy, Jewish approaches to marriage, and many other topics. We really hope that you will read his books after today's lecture if you haven't already. Rabbi Shmuley Boteach is the founder and the head of the World Values Network. He's a gifted speaker, as you'll see. He's a conversation starter, a media influencer, and a cultural phenomenon. And people call him America's Rabbi. He has devoted his life to helping people find love, build strong, healthy relationships, and loving and passionate marriages. His books, programs, and initiatives around the world have brought him acclaim as a relationship expert. He is a scholarly thinker with a finger on the pulse of the nation, earning him the title, as I said, of America's Rabbi. Please give us a big warm welcome for Rabbi Shmuley Boteach.
Yay! All right. I'm going to applaud for myself because these Zoom links are so impersonal. They're as good as we're going to get, I guess, during the pandemic, thank God. So nice to have you all. But let me give myself a round of applause. Yay! Thank you, Yonah, for such a nice introduction. Gosh, don't you wish we could go back to our Oxford years? Can you not hear me? Can anyone hear me? No one can hear me. Everyone else is muted. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. I love that. I love that. I love that all of you cannot even respond, cannot object, cannot interject, cannot stop me. I am let loose. I am set loose. You know, I'm often referred to as controversial, but you know what? The controversial man who cannot be reined in is like a king. So, how many speakers have you heard from today? Yona, I would think that I'd at least be able to hear from you, no?
I'm batting cleanup. I'm going to try to synthesize everybody at the end with one talk. I think we've had 6 speakers. I think you're our 6th speaker, Reb Shmuley.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for joining us. So we're going to talk about sex, romance, love, and everything in between. The universe and all of its questions and all of its solutions, all provided in a short 4-day speech. I don't know if you guys heard that this is like a marathon lecture that I'm giving, and we'll be doing 6-hour sessions with like an hour in between. So kind of like Woodstock 69, just without the mud and without the brown and the black acid, but in every other way it'll be exactly the same. So I hope it's all going to work out. I think sex is dying in our time. I know that sounds odd. I know that we think that we're a sex-obsessed culture. We're anything but. First of all, let me be clear. Porn is not about sex. So if you think 80%, 70% of the internet, the greatest invention of humankind since Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon, and that's all about sex. So how could you say that we're not into sex? Porn is not about sex. The male porn addict is not a sex addict. He's an orgasm addict. He's only interested in getting to the finish line. He has no interest in sex. In fact, he doesn't even want real women. He doesn't even want real interactions with women. He's usually afraid of intimacy. He's usually afraid of real feminine power. He's afraid of feminine sexuality. He needs women to be utterly submissive. So the porn addict is usually a broken man who needs to use a fraudulent sexuality to get to sexual climax, which brings in its wake this nirvana, this sense of peacefulness. So many men suffer from anxiety. They suffer from low self-esteem. They suffer from questions of inadequacy. So what porn does is, first of all, it gives them 10 million different women who are at their beck and call. Of course, they're not real. Secondly, masturbation leads to what the French call le petit mort, the little death. So he's able to actually purge sexual desire from his system. He's actually able to extinguish libido, extinguish erotic drive. It's quite an amazing thing that porn is all about not feeling sexual. So that's one thing. Porn does not prove that we're sexual. It proves precisely the opposite. And it makes men into terrible, terrible lovers. Porn addiction is becoming a huge problem in the American marriages, and it's a huge problem for the American single male. And of course, it's available on every single device, so that, let alone, I'm not even talking about all the other stuff it involves, the degradation of women and all the other allegations about the porn industry and how it treats women, etc. So then you might think, well, single people are having sex, right? Actually, they're not. Not long ago, I interviewed a woman who was the foremost expert. She's out of, I think, Syracuse University. She did the biggest study in the United States about sexuality on campus. And what she showed was the first year, freshmen, very sexual. Second year, sophomores, less so. By the time they're juniors and seniors, they're having almost no partnered sex at all. I'll tell you why. Because sex that is compartmentalized from the emotions, sex which is just recreational, quickly dissipates. If it's not fueled by something deeper, it actually grows pretty darn boring, which, by the way, is the biggest argument against porn. The biggest argument against porn is what a bore it is. It always involves the same exact stupid positions, the same, the dialogue, of course, is so deep and rich. But aside from that, or so my friends tell me, this all comes just from secondhand sources who are just telling me about this stuff. So even on campus, sex is dying. Okay, then let's move to the American marriage. Well, anyone know what is the rate of sexuality in the American marriage? Anyone know? How frequently are American husbands and wives having sex? You can write it in the chat. Let me see if you anyone? Once a month. Wait, who said once a month? Okay, whoever said once a month, you just won a free counseling session from me. God bless you. Okay. Who said once a week? 3 times a week. Who's Scott Krylov? 3 times. What, you think every American man is on a Viagra drip, like channeled directly into his cerebral cortex? 3 times a week. Haven't you guys heard of Netflix? What 3 times a week? We're binging The Crown tonight, which just launched season 4. Bi-weekly. No, I'll tell you what it is. The national average is once a week, truly, once a week, 7 minutes at a time, which includes the time he spends begging. So that's not a lot of sex. 7 minutes of sex a week in the average American marriage. Okay, and then 1 out of 3 American couples is entirely platonic. That's true. 1 out of 3 young married couples in America are best friends rather than lovers. Now, to prove to you that sex is dead, just look at even the language that we utilize in today's relationships. We're not lovers anymore. We're not soulmates. We're partners. It's a transactional word. It's almost like you launch a commercial enterprise together called marriage. You pay the mortgage, you raise your kids, you take them to after-school activities. And by the way, this is one of the reasons that divorce rates, unfortunately, are going up during the coronavirus pandemic, because a lot of husbands and wives who are not lovers and who don't have any deep erotic desire, and for whom passion is something that subsided maybe while they were dating, maybe in the first few years of marriage, they've now been forced to quarantine together and to stare at each other the entire day. The natural distractions that allowed the marriage to continue and allowed them to avoid the vacuousness of their relationship is now missing. I mean, you can't take the kids to ballet after school. Half the time the kids are even home from school. Half the time you're zooming into your own job. And now you actually have to live together, and that's leading to higher divorce rates, because there's no greater form of incarceration than being in a marriage with someone you don't want to be sexual with. Being in a marriage with someone you don't feel desire for. Let me be clear. So I've said so far, porn does not prove that we're sexual. It proves precisely the opposite. The American marriage suffering from becoming a platonic marriage, a sexual famine, singles on campus, even on campus where we think that everyone's at a sorority party, or everyone's at a frat party and getting wasted and having sex. That's also not true, let alone the abuses of sex that we've seen in the Me Too movement, of course. So what happened? What happened? Well, sex can only be one of 3 things. Sex can either be procreational, to have babies. That's what the Catholic Church says. Interestingly enough, the only people who really agree with the Catholic Church are atheists, evolutionary biologists that say the same thing, that the purpose of sex is to have babies. If you speak to Richard Dawkins, who I debated so many times, the world's most famous atheist, why do we have sex? In order to propagate the gene pool. And our genes play this game on us called love, and love isn't real. And what the poets write about and the philosophers write about is not real. It's a game that our genes play on us in order to propagate the species. Well, the Catholic Church isn't as draconian as that. It, of course, believes in love. It, of course, believes in matrimony. It, of course, believes in the monogamous and even erotic commitment between husband and wife. But it also says the principal purpose of sex is procreation, which is why you can't use any kind of contraception. Now, we know that sex is not for procreation. It's so easy to prove. Remember, I said that sex can be one of 3 things: procreational, recreational, or intimate. Let's just go. How do we know it's not procreational? Because pregnant women love sex. The human female pregnant is the only female that will accept a male of any species. Not that we are an animal species. We're a uniquely created in the image of God. I do not believe that we're thinking, talking animals, but the human female, post-menopause, pregnant, still loves sex. In fact, a lot of studies show that pregnant women enjoy sex even more than women that aren't pregnant because of enzymes and hormones and all these things that are swimming around the body. That proves that sex is not for procreation. Or menopausal women would lose their interest in sex. Another proof, interestingly enough, is the disproportionately large size of the male sexual appendage. You might say, does size matter? You know, in my book, Kosher Sex, I wrote, I quoted it from somewhere else. I have to remember who, because you have to always say where you're quoting from. That's what it says in the Mishnah. Kol omer davar b'shem omro, maybe segula olam. Whoever quotes their source brings redemption to the world. I don't know if whoever said this wants to be quoted for it, though. What was it? It's not the size of the stick, but the magic and the wand. Okay, something like that. But the point is, does size matter? Yeah, size does matter. You know why? Because the disproportionately large size of the male sexual appendage relative to male body mass meaning the male sexual appendage is much larger relative to our body mass than, say, a primate, a male gorilla. Why do we need a disproportionately large male sexual appendage? Because it facilitates and allows for face-to-face sexual relations. It means that we can make love looking into each other's eyes, which shows that sex is not just for procreation, because if it's sex for procreation, back to front would be fine. And that's the way the mammalian species all inseminate, back to front. But we human beings are capable of kissing, exchanging life breaths, peering into each other's eyes. I'm a great believer in eyes open sex. I write about that in Kosher Sex. And our limbs are literally intertwined, thereby allowing us to become one flesh, one life, one spirit. Breathing in the same life breaths. So sex is not procreational. Okay, well, what about recreational? Maybe it's recreational. Isn't that what it is? Female sexual wellness, male sexual wellness. We're supposed to masturbate, experiment. Before you marry, you need to check each other out carnally to make sure you're sexually compatible. Maybe I'll have time to discuss the myth of sexual compatibility soon, but maybe it's recreational. Maybe a woman is supposed to just be like a guy. Men have found it so easy to compartmentalize their emotions from their bodies for millennia. Now women are doing exactly the same thing. Maybe it's just recreational. Actually, it turns out it's not. Because that's why sex is dying on campus. Because sex without emotion, even though women said, we could do the same. In the 1960s, the women came along and said, look, you guys for millennia have done this thing where you kind of split yourselves in half and you put your heart in a box and you say, I'm not going to get emotionally attached. I'm just going to have sex and feel nothing. We can do the exact same thing. It turns out that wasn't even progress. Maybe you could do it, but big deal. It's not progress. It's actually regression. It's devolution, not evolution. It's not great sex to feel nothing. It's actually terrible sex. It's the worst kind of sex. It's what leads us to give up on sex and start using things like friendship as being the main thing of a marriage. Not being lovers, but being best friends. When sex is no longer fulfilling, we have to find a different reason to be in a monogamous relationship. So we start using things like communication and trust and all these other words that will never be as strong a glue as sex is. It'll never be as strong, It'll never be as strong a force as sex is. So think about it. Now you begin to understand the 50-60% American divorce rate. To keep a man and a woman glued to each other for 5 or 6 decades takes super glue. Absolute super glue. What is that super glue? Great communication. You can have great communication with your neighbors. Trust. You can have great trust with your coworkers. That glue is erotic attraction, sexual erotic attraction. And the moment you diminish it because you no longer believe in its power, so all the relationship quote unquote experts are telling you, well, the real thing, sex is okay, but what really matters in marriage is compatibility and shared values and shared goals. And what a bunch of nonsense. All of those things are important, but supplanting and replacing being lovers, give me a break. The most powerful weapon in our arsenal to stay happily together for the duration of our lives is something called erotic attraction. This inexplicable, mysterious, electric gravitation of the masculine to the feminine and the feminine to the masculine. I don't mean physical attraction only. That's only one dimension. There's 5 senses. We're supposed to be attracted to all. I'm talking about the scent of a woman or the sound of a man or the taste of sex, not just the sight. I know that in our age, doing a Zoom thing about sex right now, we only emphasize the visual. Everything today is visual. Netflix is visual, porn's visual, magazines are visual, all of our devices, iPhones, iPads, they're all visual. So in our society, where everything is pixelated, so because everything today is a pixel, thin is in. We're all supposed to be super thin, we can't have curves. But once upon a time, people actually made love with their hands. And to the hands, meat is neat, curvaceous, soft, supple flesh. It's all changed through the promotion of the visual to the diminishment of the sensual, the experiential. Okay, so we said sex can be procreational, refuted that. Recreational? No, it's not. When it's recreational without any real feeling, you feel nothing. It's not a nice feeling. Which leads us finally to the most beautiful thing ever said about sex in the history of the world. It comes from Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Al ken yazek ish es ave ves imoy. Therefore shall a man leave his father and leave his mother. V'dovak b'ishtoi, he shall cleave unto his wife. V'hayu lebasar echad, and they shall become one flesh. Let me repeat that. Therefore shall a man leave his father and leave his mother. He shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. What is the purpose of sex? Not kids and babies, although that's beautiful, it's wonderful. I'm a father of 9 children, thank God. I'm a grandfather of 7, thank God. Children are amazing. But that's not the purpose of sex. He shall cleave unto his wife, a clear sexual euphemism. And why? So that they become bone of one bone, flesh of one flesh. Sex is the single most powerful tool in our arsenal to take 2 and make them into 1. To create this highly unmathematical, almost impossible equation of 1 + 1 = 1. Great sex makes you feel intimate. It makes you feel like you're one. Bad sex makes you feel disconnected, and it ultimately dies. Jews have always had great sex because they've had the secrets of great sex. The 3 secrets of great sex are, number 1, unavailability. You can't just have sex all the time. You've got to have what we relationship experts call an erotic obstacle. You have to have something that suddenly comes between you and separates you so that you can begin to lust again. You can begin to desire again. Plato understood this, which is why he argued for platonic relationships. He wanted relationships that can never be consummated. Well, that's a really extreme response. That means that your spouse will be a permanent tease forever and ever. You'll go insane. Not a good solution. But the Jewish solution of first unavailability through 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, the whole cycle of the nida, which makes a husband lust and pine for his wife and a wife lust and pine for her husband. We have to reintroduce lust into relationships. I'm a far greater believer in the lust marriage than I am in the love marriage. Lust is much more important in a marriage than love. 2 friends can have great love, but lust is appropriate specifically to man and wife. The second secret of great sex is mysteriousness. The body is not supposed to always be fully revealed. That's the whole idea of modesty and sneas. If the body is modest outside of a sexual context, then when we remove all modesty, the body's magnetism takes over, and we have an incredibly powerful, forceful response, where a man is drawn to his wife's body and a woman is drawn to her husband's body, and sparks begin to fly. But where everything is overexposed, and we live in if there's one thing that's about our society that maybe captures it best today, it's the word revelatory. Everything today is revealed. From what you eat for breakfast, which you shove onto Instagram, to as I said before, nonstop porn, to the way we all dress, etc., to having casual sexual encounters. We reveal everything. There's nothing that's supposed to be hidden. So the first thing is unavailability. The second thing is mystery, hiddenness. Look, walk inside of a shul, and you'll see the incredible difference between Judaism on the one hand and, say, our Catholicism, our Catholic brothers and sisters on the other. In Catholicism, the God of the Catholic faith, Jesus, the Son of God, who is also a deity, and is an inextricable part of the Father, so the same deity, the same Godhead, he's completely revealed. You see him in human form. You even see a lot of his flesh because he's, in the same position as he was during the crucifixion, usually wearing a loincloth, very revealed, and suffering for mankind. When you walk into a shul, the exact opposite happens. What's the holiest thing in a shul? It's the Sefer Torah. But where is it? It's hidden. It's hidden behind parochas. It's hidden behind doors. It's hidden behind a mantle. It takes like 5 or 6 steps. And that's why we're in awe of the Torah when it's brought up from the ark. We all stand up. Because its mystery is suddenly revealed. And that's the way the body is supposed to be. And then the final thing to create a great sex life, unavailability, mystery, is sinfulness. Judaism believes in the sinful marriage. We believe in husbands and wives being forbidden to each other. That's another part of the whole nida cycle, the idea of forbiddenness. We all love that which is forbidden. We all love that which is sinful. Marriage is just so darn legal. And it's just too readily available. There has to be this idea of the sinful and the forbidden. Now, those are the 3 ingredients of lust. But to sum up, because I've now been speaking for about 20 minutes, and I'd rather take a lot of your questions. To sum up, number 1, I said sex is dead. And I kind of proved it from statistics going on in our culture. And the sad part is that it seems to be especially dead in marriage. Number 2, I said that there's 3. Why is sex dead? Because there's 3 ways to practice sex. Procreational. Well, that's not going to be that exciting just to have kids, right? I mean, it's nice, it's beautiful, but then sex is a means to an end. Recreational. It's only about having fun, but it's not fun. There's no emotion. Or when the guy doesn't call you back. Or when you feel the woman is, when you don't connect through sex, it begins to dissipate. Or the third possibility is that sex is for intimacy. And that's amazing, electrifying, wonderful. To have sex that makes us bone of one bone and flesh of one flesh. And that's why the Torah has no word for sex. The word for sex in the Torah is knowledge. And Adam came to know his wife Eve. So I could say a lot more, but you know what? By the way, for a second there, I thought, wow, what I'm saying must be really cool because I see Rabbi Yonah is smiling at me the entire time. Then I see, that is just you have like an avatar of some smiling guy. You got like Yonah's like this the whole time. And I'm thinking, whoa, he's like smiling. This isn't too controversial. It turns out, Rabbi Yonah, that was just your avatar. 1 second, hold on. Let me just, I have to go get a drink for a second. I'll be right back. Okay, thank you for waiting for me, everybody. I really appreciate it. And God bless you all. Happy to take your questions.
Oh, fabulous. Fabulous. If you have questions for Shmuley, do you want me to moderate? Or do you want
Yes, I'd rather you moderate. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Just, as long as you don't give me one of those. Okay. Okay.
Okay, first question. Rabbi Shmuley, how long should you wait before having sex when you're dating? Asks one of our participants.
At least for the appetizer. You got to at least go get to the appetizer. It's like a crazy question because studies actually show that something like 1 out of 3 singles in America has sex on the first date. So let me tell you, there's 4 stages to sex, okay? There's attraction, that's stage 1. Attraction is where you're mysteriously drawn to each other. Again, I don't just mean the physical, you're just drawn to each other. You might have heard a woman's opinion, her voice. Notice how a woman's voice in Jewish law is called an erva. It's something naked because it's so seductive. It's kind of sad that we've kind of de-eroticized so much of the feminine personality and the masculine personality. All we're left with is genitalia. But anyway, okay. Step number 1 is attraction. You're drawn to each other mysteriously. You don't even know anything about it. You don't even know each other's names. Step number 2 is verbal communication. You start talking. You start, that's the idea of a date. You go out, you start talking, you discover something about each other. Step number 3, emotional intimacy. You begin to share secrets with each other that you don't share with anyone else. And step number 4 is physical intimacy. And it has to proceed along those four steps. If you skip a step, if you go from attraction straight to physical intimacy and you skip verbal communication, emotional intimacy, those steps might never develop. And that's what I see all the time in my marital counseling. Everyone who's listening, be honest with yourself about one thing. Be honest. What is harder in life? What's harder in a relationship? Getting emotionally naked or getting physically naked? What is harder? Taking off your clothes, even in front of a stranger? Or bearing your soul, even in front of your spouse? And I bet for most of you, if you want to be honest, it's the latter. I know marriages, people who've been married for 20, 30, 40 years, and they still can't really divulge their deepest anxieties, fears, worries, concerns, dreams, fantasies, sexual fantasies. Gosh, we didn't even know that women had sexual fantasies until say, My Secret Garden by Nancy Friday. And because women were so inhibited about revealing their sexual fantasies, even to their husbands, that we didn't even know that, so we thought that the male erotic mind is like out of control. Men are like, they're porn addicts. They're visiting Planet of the Nympho Babes and their fantasies like 24/7. It turns out actually the male erotic imagination is actually very limited and at times even pathetic, which is why porn for men is so stupid, mind-numbing, and dumb. But we also discovered that women have much more elaborate erotic fantasies, but they never really discuss them because they're not sure forget the world, how their own husbands, how their own men are going to receive them. So, my advice, look, on the one hand, I'm a realist. I know people are like jumping into the sack pretty quickly these days, but you really need to make a cost-benefit analysis or decision here. Is the cost of having sex too early going to be that you're going to have really bad sex now and in the long run, as opposed to bringing in the emotional dimension and real intimacy, which will make your sex life supercharged?
Fabulous. Reb Shmuley, a bunch of people ask about, if you're going to wait until marriage, whether that's because, you're not intimate because of Orthodox prescription or because of other, belief and value systems. How are you going to know that sex is going to be good? Maybe it's that, I'm sure you've heard this, people say, I would never buy a car, right? That's like test drove it.
Right. The only thing is that people aren't cars. If people were cars, I guess I'd be like, I actually drive a smart car. If people were cars, I would be a smart car. I'm like this big, okay? And I drive a smart car. And I love my little smart car. Little things for little people. People aren't cars. And you know what? We could do a whole evening on this, but let me deal with it, and you'll forgive my brevity. The myth of sexual compatibility. There are few lies as great as the myth of sexual compatibility. We are all sexual to our core. Saying you need to test drive whether someone is as sexual as you are and making sure they have the same libido and they're just as driven and they're just as hormonal is like saying you need to test whether, breathing compatibility. I need to know if she breathes as much as I do or if she... We are sexual to our core. Just like we breathe, we're sexual. I know a lot of women, whoever follows me on Facebook, I was out with my daughter, my wife, two of our younger kids a few Saturday nights ago, and I did a Facebook Live because a religious Jewish woman walked over to me on the street and said, "Can I speak to you privately? I recognize you." And she said, "I just want you to know, I'm not sexual. I have no sexual desire at all. I have sex with my husband. I love my husband. He's a great guy. But it's like a massage. I have no erotic feelings. I never have. I don't believe that for a second." And interestingly, half the people who watched that, and I protected her identity, agreed with her. The other half agreed with me. There's no such thing as a woman who's not sexual. I will tell all the men out there who will say, "Oh, my wife's not interested in sex. That's the problem in our marriage." And I get people coming to me for sexual counseling all the time about this. If you've taken no time to heat up the oven, don't complain when the dish is half baked. So many men think that foreplay is like a kind of golf, or that monogamy is a type of wood. A lot of men suck as lovers because they employ male sexuality instead of feminine sensuality in bed, and they're very goal oriented. A woman's libido is much stronger than a man's libido. By the way, I'm saying this because while it's true that some women will say, "I'm much more sexual than my husband," and I hear that, the majority of the people complaining about this thing, sexual incompatibility, are the men. My wife's not as interested, etc. Yeah. It's not that she's not interested in sex. She's often not interested in sex with you because you don't make her feel desirable. The whole slam bam, is that all there is, man? That just doesn't work with a lot of women. First of all, we know that female sexual climax takes a little bit longer than men, but it's much more explosive. Secondly, we know that women really do find it more challenging, and I think it's a good thing, to kind of isolate emotions from the body. They want it to be a more loving, more romantic experience. I think that's one of the reasons. There is porn for women, but it's very different to porn for men. Women can't stand this garbage where, two strangers, the guy brings a pizza box and they're already doing it. They find that pretty dumb. And when you think about it, it is a little bit dumb. It's almost embarrassing that we get excited about this kind of stuff. I kind of think that we men have to kind of grow up sexually. And we shouldn't have to grow up sexually through fear, like Me Too and stuff like that. And I mean, even if men become more refined sexually or treat women better because they're terrified and afraid, then we're not really changing. When there's no inner transformation, we will have better sex lives with our wives, with the women in our lives, if we become more sensual, if we become not patient, but if we begin to enjoy the full experience of sex instead of it just making about orgasm. And let me be clear again about sexual compatibility. There's a very big difference between Eastern sexuality and Western sexuality. So Eastern sexuality is like Tantra, and I wrote a book about kosher tantric sex. It's called The Kosher Sutra. What is tantric sex? So most of you know, Tantra is about sex without climax. It's about delaying climax. Now, most of us would laugh at that. In fact, in the West, we measure whether or not sex was good based on orgasm. But in the East, that's not done. You measure whether or not people have sex by kind of its longevity. Does it go on for 2 or 3 days? I don't mean without a stop. We're not all Sting, by the way. But I just mean that there's that you don't. There's no rush to the finish line. It's not linear. It's cyclical. And instead of orgasm, which dissipates sexual desire, and suddenly, if you're a woman a moment ago, you had a real live body next to you, a guy who was actually a living, breathing being, and now you have a corpse in your bed. He is dead. Well, in Tantra, it's much more cyclical. Instead of orgasm killing him off and he's a dead man, you don't climax. You take all of that desire and you put it back into the relationship. It's very hard initially, but it's very rewarding because now desire and lust is reborn. By the way, isn't that what happens in the Jewish marriage as well when you think about it? Isn't there a great tantric element because of nida? So if a woman's cycle is 4 or 5 days out of the month, and then she has to wait another 7 days, so 12 days. And that whole time, lust between the husband and wife are building up until she goes to the mikvah. Again, this idea of rebirth, because the whole problem with the diminishment of sexual attraction is when there's no novelty. We all need novelty. Now, some novelty can come even from sexual enhancement things like sex toys, which are fine in a marriage. What's not fine is porn. Again, anything which enhances passion is fine. Anything which compromises intimacy is not fine. So you could hear that I think porn is very destructive to a relationship, but sex toys or anything else, there's no problem with it. But it's not a panacea. It's not a solution to all the problems of novelty. And neither is nida. Nida is not a panacea. It's not going to save your marriage from extinction. But it is a phenomenally important element of a healthy, lustful sex life because of delayed gratification. And by the way, this is the reason why I'm personally opposed to masturbation in marriage. Look, the halacha really is opposed to masturbation for men because of spilling of seed, like the story of Onan and Tamar. In a few weeks' time, we'll read that in the Parsha. But women don't spill seed, so the halacha doesn't really say there's anything wrong with women masturbating, in marriage. And again, you're going to say, oh, Shmuley, please don't tell us like one of these religious guys that if I masturbate, I'm going to go blind and I'm going to start having hair grow out of my ears and all this other stuff, which will happen anyway, for sure. But masturbation in marriage is where you find a sexual release without sexual connection. That's what masturbation is. Masturbation is sexual release without sexual connection. And if sex is about intimacy, then it's not a good idea because the propulsion that our sexual selves gives to us, the propulsion that our erotic hunger gives to us is supposed to connect us to our spouse. And let me finally say, before we go to the next question, this is more than just being about sex. It's actually about loneliness because loneliness is destroying America today. And the pandemic has really exacerbated loneliness. So many of you think, oh, loneliness, loneliness is when you're quarantined alone and you're not married or, you can't even hug your parents because you don't want to make them sick, God forbid, so you're lonely. That's not true. I will tell you some of the loneliest people in the world that I know are married people. Some of the loneliest women I know are wives. Some of the loneliest men I know are husbands. And in many ways, they're lonelier than even singles. Because at least the single person lives with the belief or the hope that they will marry and they'll be intimate with someone emotionally. But if you're married and you can't talk to each other and express fears, anxieties, as I said, loneliness, then you have no hope. All you have is Netflix. All you have is Amazon Prime. All you have is Hulu. All you can do is the two of you can together watch TV or a movie together in order to fill the emptiness, the non-conversation of this platonic marriage. And that's why we've become such addicts. You want to hear something interesting? Before this disgusting, vile pandemic, may God erase it from the earth already. So about a year ago, I was in Australia with my wife visiting our in-laws, my wife's parents. I was also a rabbinical student in Australia decades ago, so I know the community there, so I'm often invited to speak there, etc. And then I was invited to speak in New Zealand. So I went to New Zealand for a few days. And I did a press tour for my book with Pamela Anderson, Lust for Love, in New Zealand. Get this. The main book reviewer panned my book and said, it's not that I disagree with Rabbi Shmuley that sex is the most important thing in a relationship. I agree with him. What I disagree with is where he says it's the most pleasurable experience in life. He said, I think that me and my partner far more enjoy watching Netflix together than having sex. Sex can't even compete with Netflix. And he was completely serious. And by the way, a lot of people would probably say the same thing. And that's why we're going back to the sex for procreation thing. Maybe not even for procreation. As I said before, sex is dying. Okay.
Okay, Shmuley. We've got a lot of questions. One is, if a woman no longer has her cycle, do you also suggest that they have a separation? Two, how do you keep lust going later in marriage? And let's say, I'm just going to give you three questions at once. And the third one is, let's say you're dating somebody long distance. How can you see if there's chemistry there?
Let me try to answer in the order that the questions were presented, Yona. Yes, I think that even after a woman's menses have ceased, they should practice on and off. I think that non-Jewish women should. I think we all need erotic obstacles. And by the way, that's only one of, as I said, nida is a vital and irreplaceable component of a healthy sex life and a healthy marriage. But it's not a panacea. It's not the only thing. There are other erotic obstacles. I think that wives should be revealing their sexual fantasies about strangers to their husbands, without, God forbid, ever acting on it, of course. But husbands almost always think that their wives are already kind of possessed, owned, as it were. And the ownership of a woman is not just something that's been practiced as part of property throughout the ages. It's been practiced mentally by men who think, oh, I don't have to seduce my wife all over again. She has the ring on her finger. She has my last name. Now I can have a roving eye for other women. That's not true. Women are much more sexual than men. And I think that wives should be revealing, in the right context, under the right conditions, their sexual fantasies, because it creates, again, a little bit of distance so that there has to be greater pursuit. But yes, even after women's menses have ceased, I believe that we should be practicing the same. The second question was about how do we create lust? There's only one way. Buy my book, Kosher Lust. There is no other way. Without my book, Kosher Lust, you will have no lust in your relationship whatsoever. You're doomed. You're finished. It's all over. Game over. Goodbye. I wish there was some other way, but there isn't. So what can you do? And what was the third question? I'm sorry, Rabbi Yona?
I'm laughing because I miss you so much, and I can't wait till you're
because of this vile coronavirus, like this vile virus. I mean, talk about an erotic impediment. You would think that the coronavirus would have created unbridled lust within each and every one of us, because we can't even kiss strangers now. I mean, in Europe, men kiss each other on the cheek just to say hello. You do that now, you die, God forbid. So the separations are so draconian. But instead of seeing greater lust, we're seeing less. The coronavirus is very unsexy. It sucks. Because hearing day and night how we're all going to die turns out to be a real passion killer. By the way,
real buzzkill.
Well, by the way,
we'll get to the third question.
Well, I'll just say, just because we're on the subject, the only thing I'll say about the coronavirus is this: yes, we should listen to Dr. Fauci and all the restrictions placed on us by, follow the science. Yes, we should wear masks, of course. Yes, we should social, all of that. But God Almighty, shouldn't the doctors and especially the rabbis also give us some damned hope? Are we only ever going to hear every day another 100,000 Americans die? I'm not saying that we should bury our head in the sand and pretend it's not there. I'm just saying humankind has always lived with hope. And I don't hear any kind of hope. It sucks. Where is the voice of inspiration? I don't just mean about a vaccine coming, God willing. Where are rabbis to say, Mashiach is on his way? You have to believe that God will heal us. Isn't that the reason that Christianity became the most successful idea in the history of the world, practiced by 1.9 billion people? Because while everyone was dying of the bubonic plague or dying in childbirth, the measles, smallpox, they still spoke about life. And I don't understand why we Jews don't do that as well. It doesn't mean that you should live delusionally away from the science, God forbid. And it doesn't mean that you should not practice social distancing or wearing a mask, or of course you should. It just means that I want to hear the voice of hope. I can't watch the news anymore. And don't think that all of this doesn't have repercussions for depression and suicide. I'm not talking about the lockdowns even. I'm talking about the message of hopelessness, which is the only thing we've been hearing lately. Sorry, what was the third question?
Well, I want to agree with you, Shmuley, that the stress and the hopelessness that some people might feel is a real, killer when it comes to passion. And I've heard it from married couples. The third one was, how do you maintain, and it's dating in the coronavirus age, or even not coronavirus, you met you met through a matchmaker, you're far away from each other. How can you explore intimacy when you're so far apart? And then a kind of a sub question is, let's say you do meet in person, but you're wearing masks. So how can you get to see the person?
You're talking about singles now, is that right?
Singles.
Well, the masks just add to the mystery. Every day is Purim, every day is Halloween, except you're going to die. But aside from that, no, God forbid. That was a very, very gallows humor. I apologize. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I think we still have to date even during the coronavirus. I just think that we have to do so with with precautions that shuls and other things. My father passed away a few months ago. Very difficult time for me. He lived in Los Angeles, as many of you know. I wrote a cover story for the Jewish Journal about what it was like losing him. And I go to shul 3 times a day to say Kaddish. I have to wear a mask. I get temperature checked. I go through all that rigmarole, which is necessary. But I do it because it's important. Because honoring a deceased parent is very important. Lahavdil, to separate from death to life, dating is also important, and marrying is important. Our daughter just got married 2 weeks ago, thank God, during the coronavirus. I've actually been very inspired at how many people are getting married during the coronavirus. I think it's a beautiful affirmation of life. I don't just mean Orthodox Jews, and I don't just mean Jews. I mean, well, look at Colin Jost from SNL, who married Scarlett Johansson, nice Jewish girl. I don't know what his religion is. I doubt he's Jewish. Maybe, God willing, Yona, you and I, or other rabbis can meet Colin Jost and talk to him about the Jewish faith, and maybe he'll see fit to embrace a life of Jewish values and maybe even a life of Jewish observance. But because if you have the same religion, it's much easier to have the same values and raise children with the same traditions and a more stable family. But look at how many movie stars, celebrities, non-celebrities are getting married to the coronavirus. So that just shows that dating is possible and marriage is possible. And people, when my daughter got married 2 weeks ago, we knew we could push the wedding off, God forbid, and do it at a normal time when hundreds of people might attend. Or we could do it now when tens of people would attend. She got married in Pennsylvania. It was never up for debate. We knew that she was going to get married now. We were not going to push off her marriage. And if it was just her and her chassan and a quorum of 10, that would be enough as well. Because you don't delay marriage. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe was insistent on that. You never delay a marriage. Our daughter Chetziba had her bas mitzvah a month after my father passed away in the middle of the coronavirus. We buried my father in Israel on the Mount of Olives during the coronavirus. Flew to Israel during the coronavirus. Had to make all those during the coronavirus. Life has to go on. The absence of life, honoring the dead, has to go on. But I don't think that we have to just stop all life. I think we have to find. I feel Americans. We Americans we're extremists. So everything's an extreme. You either shut the country down completely because we're all going to die, or you take no precautions whatsoever because it's a hoax. No, let's not be a bunch of idiots. There's a coronavirus. A lot of people have died. I know people who have died. And I know people who almost died. And then I know people who had the virus and had nothing. No symptoms and they had nothing. So the smart thing is in the middle. Open the schools, but monitor. Go out and wear a mask. Open the shuls, but limit the numbers. and practice social distancing, but you have to still have shul, et cetera, et cetera. And continue to date. I don't believe you should put your intimate life on hold. Should you be having sex with strangers during the coronavirus? No, you got to be crazy. I don't think you should have sex with strangers without the coronavirus. I gave you all the reasons why I think it's a bad idea. So you can go out without touching and kissing, etc. And not because you don't want to catch something, but rather because you want to preserve the 4 essential steps of a relationship: attraction, verbal communication, emotional intimacy, and finally physical intimacy.
Hey, Reb Shmuley, what we have seen also is a couple of people that were single for a long time all of a sudden decided to make a big move and got married during coronavirus. People who were taking their time. Could you address this question? It's not coming specifically from one person, but a bigger question. And it's a big question. I'm also going to talk about it in my talk. Why get married? Why not just be playing the field?
You're saying that people who were like dating decided to marry during the coronavirus specifically? I'm not surprised, because strangely enough, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me with what I'm about to say, and they may even find it offensive, but I'll say it anyway, because what the heck? We're all going to die, right? So Israel saves. No, again, that gallows humor, we got to keep that in check. You know the main reason to marry? It's what the Torah says. The main reason to marry is to escape loneliness. So people are going to say, to escape loneliness, what a pathetic reason that is. I'm not a loser. I'm not lonely. I don't have to get married because I'm lonely. We are all existentially lonely. I don't mean the aloneness that comes from not having a lot of friends. I don't mean the loneliness that results from the isolation of being quarantined. I mean the loneliness of not feeling understood. I mean the loneliness of not feeling essential in someone else's life, feeling superfluous. I believe that there is one great human fear in life, and I think all fears stem from it. It's the river of fear, and then it has all these tributaries. All the fears that govern our actions, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of death, they all come from a greater fear. And it's actually quite a simple fear, but very profound. It's the fear of being ordinary. The greatest human fear is that I'm not special, that there was nothing that ever distinguished me, that I was never unique. And that's why I'm motivated to try to get into Harvard, or to start a hedge fund, make a lot of money, to prove that I'm not ordinary. I'm special. Look at the car I drive. I'm special. Look at the zip code I live in. I'm special. Look at the names I can drop. I'm special. Look at the gorgeous woman on my arm. I'm special. All of those things are ephemeral. Marriage isn't, but if it's just someone on your arm, that's ephemeral. We even fear death because we fear being ordinary. What greater proof is there that you were never special than the fact that one day you're going to die, that you're just mortal? And all the people who said they can't live without you, maybe even your spouse, they're going to remarry. They'll miss you, but they'll carry on with their lives. And the earth will continue to spin on its axis without you, thereby proving your greatest fear, that you were never really that important. You were never really that essential. So the greatest fear is that I'm ordinary. The greatest remedy is that one person makes me feel extraordinary at all times, at all places. My wife, my husband. Marriage is the quintessential, most important institution, and it is fueled by a desire to assuage loneliness. So I'm not surprised that during the coronavirus, many people decided to marry, because they've begun to confront not aloneness, but existential loneliness. That's a good thing. That's actually a sign of maturity. The people who don't think that they're existentially lonely are not mature. They're at times they could be like big babies. They distract themselves with this little piece of candy and this little shopping spree and this little addiction and that addiction and constant distractions. And they're afraid to be alone with themselves. They're terrified of it. That's how children deal with loneliness, by crying and just getting a salve like a lollipop. But we adults, we deal with existential loneliness through human intimacy. That's mature. And so I'm not surprised that a lot of people are, thank God, rising to the occasion. But it shouldn't have to come as a consequence of a global pandemic. The fear of death is not what should be motivating us to embrace life. I can't stand when people say like, oh, Israel came about because of the Holocaust. That's nonsense. It doesn't take 6 million Jews dying to give us a state of our own. We longed for Zion and Israel for 2,000 years since the Romans kicked us out and murdered us and expelled us. We don't appreciate life because there's death. We're not a dualist religion. So you don't get married because there's a coronavirus. But if that is what's spurring people to get married right now, so be it. But companionship it's critical, it's essential.
Reb Shmuley, this has been awesome, and we so enjoy spending time with you and benefiting from your wisdom and experience and bringing so many important ideas. If you could leave us with one idea that we go forward from this seminar, one thing that we all take with us, into the new month of Kislev, which is coming up, what would that be?
First of all, thank you for reminding me about Kislev, because Kislev is my birthday, the 7th day of Kislev. So it's an important month for me, and my secular birthday is November 19th, this week. I've always loved November 19th because, not only because it's the day I came into the world, and Judaism actually celebrates birthdays. When I was Michael Jackson's rabbi many moons ago, I remember that as a Jehovah's Witness, he never celebrated birthdays. Jehovah's Witnesses feel that celebrating a birthday is a form of vanity. We Jews feel the opposite. That, as Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said, that your birthday is the day that God decided that the world could not continue without you. So it's a significant day. But I've loved November the 19th because it's the day that Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. And I love great oratory, and it's like this tiny little speech, and less is more, and it's the most famous American speech probably in our history. Maybe up there with Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, probably the two most famous American speeches of all time. So I love that day, November 19th. But a birthday causes you to reflect, because you kind of have to take stock. And the month of Kislev, you asked specifically, Rabbi Yonah, about the month of Kislev. That also causes us to take stock, because Kislev could be a very dark month, quite literally. It's the month where we head into deep winter. It's where the days become the shortest. What time is it getting dark in LA right now?
Oh, we have 4:30.
4:30. Right, so it's getting dark here about the same time. And Yonah, you and I lived in Oxford when I was a rabbi there for 11 years, and as you said, we were colleagues, thank God. And in England, it gets dark. The light starts at 11:30 a.m. and then it gets dark at 11:34 a.m. You have 4 minutes of daylight. Actually, that's more like Norway and Scandinavia and Iceland. But jokes aside, Kislev could be a very dark month, quite literally, because the days recede and deep winter comes. And then along comes Hanukkah to tell us that in the deepest darkness we could have this festival of light. So I am introspective on my birthday this year, much more so than I would have been other years. Losing a parent is also a very introspective thing, because your parents are always out there in front of you. You're kind of like a quarterback, and your parents are the front line in life, and then your front line disappears. And now these linebackers can just have at you, and the defensive ends, and they can just like tackle you. So it makes you much more introspective. I think family, I have lived for many things. I've tried to, at least. I've lived for the Jewish people. I have lived for America, which I love. I have lived for Israel, which I love. I have lived to fight genocide, which I think is humankind's highest obligation, to affirm the value of the infinite value of every human life, regardless of race, color, or creed. But more than anything else, I've lived for family. I don't think there's anything higher to live for. I think if you blow it as a husband or as a wife or as a father or mother, you kind of blown it, period. That's your foremost obligation. And that means that our marriages have to be passionate. And it means that we have to prioritize our children and give them a sense of self-worth so they don't spend their lives proving themselves to strangers. I think we have to have amazing sex lives, because if we get the exhilaration from our spouse, from our marriages, then we won't have to live from adventure to adventure with a faux sense of adventure, constant travel, constant acquisition. And that's why, and Judaism's always understood these things. We are a religion that has so much to teach the world about sex. I remember, Yona, because, if you remember, I published Kosher Sex in England in 1998, and I published it in the United States in 1999. And it was, so I've written 33 books, thank God. No one should be that impressed, because many have sold 33 copies. But I've published 33 books, and maybe a third of them have been about relationships. And maybe, 10, 12. And I hope you guys can order them on Amazon or order them on my website. But there's Kosher Sex, there's Kosher Lust, there's Lust for Love, there's a few on parenting with fire, there's 10 conversations you need to have with your children, there's the Kosher Sutra, there's Kosher Adultery. And when I wrote the best known of them all, Kosher Sex, it was so hard getting it published, because everyone said, like the publishers in England at the time, the mainstream publishers were like, give me a break. Who is going to want to learn about sex from a rabbi? So I had to convince them that of all the things that Jews are known for, they're great businessmen. Jews know how to because we all know we control the world and the banks and the media. But aside from all that, it turns out that we're even better at sex than we are at controlling the media, the world, or spreading disease throughout the universe. And it's amazing to me that of all these horrible stereotypes about Jews, some of them there's a few positive stereotypes. Most are negative racial stereotypes. It amazes me that we've never been known as a sexual nation. It amazes me that we're anything but, when really Judaism celebrates the electric connection between man and woman, husband and wife, more than any other religion on earth. And we have such brilliant teachings. And there are 24 books of the Bible, 24 books of the Tanakh. And the Talmud says that the holiest of them all is the Song of Solomon, which is an erotic love poem. That's all it is. It's this beautiful, gorgeous erotic love poem. My book, Kosher Lust, is essentially an interpretation of Song of Solomon. So there's a lot to learn. And before I go, Rachel and Yona, let me just tell you, as you said, Yona, you and I have known each other for almost 3 decades, thank God. Even though I'm 25 years old, things are so weird in America. Like, it's just weird. Like, we don't know who our president is. Someone won, someone didn't win, someone lost, someone didn't concede. Or do we even have a president? Is there still a government? Do we love each other, hate each other? And of all the mysteries that currently govern America, the mystery of how you and I can know each other for 30 years when I'm celebrating my 25th birthday this coming Wednesday is just bizarre. But it's just part of the strangeness that captures America today. So we've known each other for almost 3 decades, thank God. And Yona, the last, I was just thinking about you. So Yom Kippur passed not long ago, and I was thinking, as I was saying, Maftir Yona, your name, that last year on Yom Kippur, I was with you at your shul, listening to you read Maftir Yona. I was on my way walking to my father. I had spoken in Netzach, and I was walking to my father to spend the Eilah with my father, and I had to catch Mincha, but I had planned it to be with you. And that's because I love your shul, and I've davened at your shul so many times. And you and Rachel have created the most amazing community, which is why I was so happy and proud to be a part of this today. It's kind of sad and lonely not to have community around, but you guys have created this community that is now virtual and actual, and it's only expanded its numbers. And one of the best relationship seminars that I've ever participated in, to be honest, was the one that you organized on the Queen Mary, or as we call it, the cruise to nowhere, on that Shabbos when I got to go on a boat that went absolutely nowhere. And you didn't tell me that actually you're going on a cruise, but you're staying in Long Beach, so you're not going on a cruise. You're going on the cruise that goes. It's like being 25 and 30 at the same time. All these mysteries that just don't make sense. But that was one of the best relationship seminars I ever participated in. I loved it. Honestly, I had a freaking blast that Shabbos. And we got to do it again. So thank you for having me. And then there's Shana Sorrentino, who helped you put this together. And Shana has been my friend now for, I think, 15 years, Shana, is it? We met when I spoke in Tucson all those years ago. And Shana's worked with the World Values Network. And she's a very close friend of our family. And an amazing young woman. And I'm close to her parents and her whole family. And so big shout out to you as well, Shana. And I can't wait for all of us to get together, in LA or wherever it is. And and for all of you out there, may all your sex be kosher sex.
Thank you, Rabbi Shmuley. Thank you, Rabbi Shmuley.
Oh, and if anyone wants to stay in touch, you can write to me, shmuley@shmuley.com. is my email, shmuley@shmuley.com, not hard to remember. Or on Facebook, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach on Facebook, Instagram, Rabbi Shmuley, Twitter, Rabbi Shmuley. So please stay in touch. If you have any relationship questions, you can write to me at shmuley@shmuley.com. But Yonah, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. And Bezos Hashem, your community will continue to grow, and get all those singles married. I have 2 single kids. Let me advertise right now, because let me just see if they're watching. Hang on a second. If they're watching, I'm not going to do this because they'll kill me, and that'll be the end of my relationship with them. Hang on one second. I don't see them. Don't see them. Okay, great. Coast is clear, and my secret is safe with all of you. None of you are going to say this. So I have an amazing son named Mendy. Mendy is an IDF veteran, served in one of the elite units, combat units of the IDF, Pulsar Sheva. He's a NYU student, but he has Chabad Tzmicha, amazing young man. And I'd love for him to meet a great Jewish girl. And if any of you tell him that I said this, that'll be the end. So do not say. Then I have my daughter Chana, another IDF veteran. But see, Mendy and Chana live in Israel, but they both came here now for their sister's wedding. So I don't know how many of you are in New York, but if you think you are the right stuff for a man who has children who are exactly the same age as him, which is, again, a miracle, then write to me at shmuley@shmuley.com. Or do it to Rabbi Yonah, the world's greatest matchmaker, okay?
We will keep them in mind. And I vouch for everything you say. Your kids are absolutely wonderful and phenomenal human beings, and they take after their wonderful parents.
Their mother, thank God, yeah.
Please send our love to Debbie,
We will.
who we miss a lot as well.
Thank you, Yonah. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Shana. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Shmuley.
Thank you, Shana.
Well,
Bye, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. Go to kosher.sex. You'll see everything that Chana and I are doing together to strengthen marriages and galvanize relationships. God bless you.